I know it's been more than 3 weeks since, of course, family members were taken hostage. I'll just begin by asking you how you're doing today.
Thank you. I'm doing okay. You know, it's hard to describe. It's a very surreal feeling.
And in terms of the sort of sequence of events, I know that you've talked about this multiple times and it is difficult to discuss. I'm hoping you can share with our viewers your conversations with your relatives leading up to this.
Sure. So the morning of October 7th, I mean, they're behind me, right? Or they're ahead of me 7 hours. So I was sleeping. But when Hamas was terrorizing the kibbutz Nir Oz, where they were in their bomb shelter, you know, my cousin was in communication with my family in Israel through the family WhatsApp. And as it became clear that the house was on fire, she, in a voice note to my family said, the house is on fire. It's, the girls are choking. We're not going to make it. We're probably not going to get out of this. We love you. And that was essentially the last we heard from her. Eventually, we saw a TikTok video of some of them being carted away by Hamas terrorists. And so once we saw them in that video, we had some shred of an idea that they had been taken hostage. And then about a week later, the IDF confirmed that they were hostages in Gaza.
Certainly, I know this hasn't been the case for many people, but I'm wondering, is there any sense that you have of how they might be doing?
No, we don't have any, the government's not passing information to us about that. Understandably, I assume sensitive intelligence is not something they can share with civilians, even family members, I would assume. So we don't really have any other information regarding that. My cousin was seen in a propaganda video that was released, and she looks absolutely awful and unwell. But beyond that, we really have no idea of how they're doing in Gaza. We don't know.
How are you also coping with, of course, every day that this war continues, there are the airstrikes that are being launched, and many people saying, of course, that's putting civilians in harm's way, but the hostages as well, who many don't know exactly where these hostages might be located. So how has that been like for you every day, watching the news of these airstrikes and knowing not knowing enough about the well-being of your family?
I mean, I think like anyone who is just desperate for the lives of their family, for the return of our family, of course, we're afraid. I'm scared. And the level of uncertainty that we feel is unnerving, to say the least. But the only thing I've been able to do is step into action and advocate for my family. I'm just a person who loves my family. And so I've been spending my days really focused on that.
Can you tell us a little bit about your family, who, of course, you are so concerned about right now, but just share a little bit with our viewers about who they are?
Yeah, so I'm very, very close with my cousins. I have a very large family in Israel, and I really grew up with these cousins. So Sharon is like a little sister to me. We really grew up together. She was just here in August for my brother's wedding here in New York, and we just got to celebrate together. She was just in my kitchen. I was doing her hair, merely 2 months ago, basically. And Danielle is like an older sister to me. She, she's one of the most nurturing, warmest, like motherly people I know. She's a single mother to her daughter, Amelia. And she's been a great source of comfort and someone to look up to for me in my life. And I love them both very much. And then David, who is Sharon's husband, is a warm, gentle man. We were so excited to welcome him into the family. Actually, today, right now, is David and Sharon's 6th wedding anniversary, which I attended in Israel. So today they are spending their anniversary as hostages in Gaza. And then, of course, the children, right? There's children, and it's, what can I say about them? They're children. They're 3 years old and 5. They're innocent babies.
And one can only imagine, really cannot imagine, how difficult and traumatic that must be also for those young children, not having a sense at those ages of what exactly is happening. I wanted to also ask you what message you might have for the Prime Minister. We've had many hostage negotiators who dealt with Hamas, who've joined us on this program, who have said that essentially there are different deals that are possibly being put forward, but doesn't seem like it's a conversation that the Prime Minister is willing to have right now.
I mean, I would urge him to have those conversations. My family in Israel has made some statements that, we know there are negotiations happening through Qatar and Egypt, and we would encourage, our leaders in the international community to please do whatever they can, use any leverage that they can to aid in those negotiation conversations.
And because you touched on it too, international governments, you're in New York right now. What sort of other conversations and pressure would you like to see come from international governments when it comes to those 240 hostages?
I'm really not an expert on what the government should or shouldn't do. All I know is I want them to make this their number one priority, that we get these hostages back as soon as possible. I think it's probably the fastest way to end this war. So my ask would be to continue whatever they can do to help further along these negotiations to get the hostages out of there unconditionally.
And finally, I wanted to ask you, we have seen some instances where a hostage has been rescued by IDF forces. We've seen also the release of some hostages. How much hope does that give you and your family?
It's hard to say, right? It's like this, there are now 250. I don't remember what the number, it keeps growing. It's hard to say, do we have time to trickle out hostages? Not really. We have children in there. There's babies in there. They need medicine. We also need the Red Cross to be allowed to see hostages and take care of them. So it's time is of the essence. Every moment they're in there, it's going to get worse for them. So it's hard to say that there's hope in that.
Well, Alana, I know that it is difficult for you to recount this and to talk about it, but we appreciate you sharing what you're going through with our viewers. So thank you for your time.